Do we have anybody on the middle school live stream?
Yeah, we got 5 right now.
Okay, great. Well,
I think we'll just go ahead. What's that?
You can continue to get my email address. I was getting it.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to, I didn't know if they could scan that or not. Those of you in the crowd, I mean, I don't think you need to use the scan piece. If the two of you have questions, just let me know. Everybody at home, thank you for joining in. I know it's a beautiful night, so I think that's interfering with some of our families coming out. If you have the ability to scan this QR code at home, if that's actually visible to you, you can scan that if you want to ask questions. If you can't, feel free to email sfrank, S-F-R-A-N-K, @zcs.k12.in.us. She's going to actively monitor her email and will answer any questions that we can as well. So right here is probably seen if you have a middle schooler that you've seen taking a selfie. So this piece here is going to be a little bit more geared towards the middle schools all the way up through high school, so kind of that 13 to 18-year-old age. Obviously our 5th graders are not that old. We're a little bit different in Zionsville. Most districts have their 5th grade at the elementary level. Is that how it is in Westfield?
They're an intermediate.
Okay.
5th and 6th grade.
So ours are with the middle school campus. So again, we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but these are all of our schools and talking a little bit about our trusted learning environment. We belong to a national consortium of school networks, and they have put out, it's a very rigorous system that we have to go through. Hey guys, thanks for coming in. We basically have 5 different categories, and it is all about protecting the private information of our kids, the personally identifiable information. We take that very seriously. And I'll just kind of tell this story now. I don't know if you guys are here for it. Earlier, I was at a cybersecurity training years ago, and a member from the FBI that was talking to us posed this question to us, and he said, how much do you think your social security number is worth on the dark web, if it were to be stolen? And does anybody have a guess? Anybody want to take a guess? It's like nickels to a quarter or something like that. And then he told us, what do you think a 5-year-old's social security number is worth? And everybody was like, yeah, and he's like, no, it's like worth $50 to $75. Because they are not going to check it for 13 years until they start applying for colleges or loans or anything like that. So that is a piece that we're starting to see at school districts and cyber attacks that we're seeing more and more. Did anybody see the news story on the LA Unified School District? They just had a massive data breach in LA, and they have a huge technology team with all kinds of money behind it. But he told us this story about a kid that applied for college and found out they owned a defunct golf course somewhere in Phoenix under their name and their social security number. So it really dawned on us, like, we've really got to protect every bit of information for our students. So with this, a very boring part of my job is I can't tell you the number of privacy policies and user agreements and terms of use that I've read for all the applications that we approve or don't approve throughout Zionsville Community Schools. I can talk a little bit more about that later on, but that's kind of the crux of it. There's only 22 schools, districts across the country that have actually applied and gotten certificates, so we're really quite proud of it. And we didn't get it all right away. The first year, they said, sorry, not even close. So it wasn't something we could turn on a dime. It was a lot of cleanup work on our part, and so we did all of those things, and then we have gotten that for the last few years. We have to reapply every 2 years and show that we're continuing to improve in our stances and structures. So we're up again in 2023. So a little bit of unconventional wisdom is going to be shared with you tonight. I've used this slide before, so if you've seen it, I apologize, but this was 2002. The advice typically was don't get in strangers' cars and don't meet people from the internet. Now, in 2022, you summon strangers to pick you up in a car that you found on the internet. So it's not really the same. This is what's happened in 20 years. The internet, well, I guess 40 years, right? 1983 is when the internet really started to get its foothold. So a lot is changing at an incredibly logarithmic pace. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The first thing we're going to talk a little bit about is some of the data that we're, as a team, we look at quite a bit to see what's going on out in the world right here. And this piece here, hopefully at home, it's not too blurry for you, but it says the majority of parents are concerned that their child might ever spend too much time on screen. And I would like to put an asterisk beside some of that. We're going to talk about it a little bit later because to just talk strictly about screen time is not exactly fair to some extent. Now, there's the entertainment side, and then there's the, I'm going to learn stuff, I'm going to see parts of the world that I didn't think I could see, or talk to the author of the book I'm reading, things like that. So there are differences in the screen time that we'll talk a little bit about, but parents are concerned about this. 71% have shown some concern there, and then you can see on your right side, who do they go to for help? Doctors, other parents, teachers, parenting websites and blogs. So as we start to see this data, these are why we put these things together, to share as much of our knowledge as we can. It's something we've been in education for a long time. All of us have kiddos at home. When I first started doing these, I had a little 5-year-old. That was really easy. I now have a 13-year-old, and it's getting immensely harder to do this. And a 13-year-old that I'm pretty sure is going to be a lawyer someday because she's really good at arbitrating with us. So kids are getting online earlier and earlier. You can see there 51% of parents whose young child, and I apologize for everybody that's in attendance, I'm trying to read for the live stream in case they can't see it. 51% of our parents whose young child has their own smartphone say their child got the device between 9 and 11. That continues to drop. We are starting to see 2nd and 3rd graders bringing phones and smartwatches and things like that to school. It's a very interesting phenomenon. And then right here, the average age kids are signing up for their own social media accounts is dropped below the threshold, which typically is 13. There's these called CAPA, Children's Consumer Parental, I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head, sorry. But it's basically saying like, Facebook needs to be 13 before you can sign up for it, or 16, or 18, depending on the social media site. So typically, most social media websites have in their privacy policy that you cannot sign up for it until you are the age of 13. And we see right here that 12.6 is the age that we're starting to see this more and more. So a lot of this research came from Pew Research Center. They had I can't remember, there's several different articles that stole some of this from, but nearly all teens in 2022 have access to a smartphone. So that's up from 73% in 2014-15. So you can see here, 95% of our teenagers have smartphones. So it's pretty ubiquitous at this point. So it's a piece that we really need to start figuring out what we're doing with all of those smartphones. So what are they doing online? How many of you, Facebook used to be the big dog in the fight there. They have dramatically reduced it, and you can see there. In 2014, they had 71% of the shares there, and they're down to like 32. So YouTube has come out, swinging there at 95%, quite a few YouTube pieces there. And what's really great might not be the right word, half of these didn't exist in 2014-15. Some of these are not going to exist in the next 5 years, either 7 years, whatever it may be. But we're starting to see a trend in some of these with TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat that there's this impermanence piece to it, where I like to put something out that I know that it's going to, I suppose, will go away, but doesn't really actually go away all the time. 36% of teens themselves say they spend too much time on social media. So this is a really positive thing, I think, that they're starting to recognize. Maybe I'm spending too much time on social media. If 36% of them are saying it. That is in comparison, and there's a little bit of slant, I think, to some of these articles, the my side biases there. Because 55% and 8% there, 63% say, we're just right with the amount we use. So it's an interesting dichotomy there among our teenagers. But it's a good thing. I think that 36% can recognize that they may be spending too much time on that. 54% of our teens say it would be hard to give up social media. That's a scary piece as well. But one piece that we've talked a little bit about before is that with that phone and, this line, all my friends use this, and this is how my friends communicate. We don't text anymore. I need this so that I know what my friends are doing and I can be a part of the group. And again, those are really tough conversations that we don't have all the answers for you to talk about. But we'll get into a few things a little bit later on, but you can just see a little bit of that information there. Nearly half of the teens now say they use the internet almost constantly. So you can see the 14-15 data, the 2022 data, and that has changed. And obviously, you saw that the number of kids that have smartphones at those ages has gone up as well. So back in 2014-15, 24% said they were almost constantly. And I don't exactly know, there was no determination given in this study for what was being done online or with those sites. So we're not exactly sure what they meant by that. And I really did look for when some of this study was done, because if it was during the pandemic, they were probably spending a lot of time either doing schoolwork, online specifically. So this one may be skewed a little bit. I just couldn't get deep enough to find all of that. But again, 46% are now saying from the 24%, it's a pretty significant increase in just 7 years there of constant use of social media. So why does all this matter? You can see over here our Starbucks talking to our Facebook piece here. Hey, I want to reach people who are interested in coffee. Here's 10 million people who are there. When you sign up for social media, it's free, right? Because you are the product that they are utilizing. Sorry, phone's talking to me. So information is the most valuable commodity in the world now. This is these billion-dollar, trillion-dollar industries. And the internet has basically become an attention-based economy. And if you've read any of the work there on the algorithms that are going on, it is what they are doing. They want to keep you online. They want to keep you engaged in that so that they can sell those advertising pieces. So, oops, get a couple of these on there. Let's talk a little bit about some of the pieces they're utilizing nowadays. How many people know all of these apps just from their picture? Anybody know a few of them? Yeah? Snapchat? Everybody got that one? Anybody know that one up top? Tinder? It's a widely downloaded one. You've got Reddit, you've got Among Us, you've got the WhatsApp, the Meet Me, or Meetup. So there's all kinds of different pieces. They're coming in droves. It's almost impossible to keep up with all of the different applications that come out on the daily. So we're going to go through a few that are out there and talk about why it may be something you want to have conversations with your student about, your kid about. One of them is Kik. Anybody seen this one at all? And you're going to see a pattern emerging here soon enough, but it's a free app-based messaging system, so you'll see it on phones quite a bit. There's commercial brand integration. It's not monitored at all, so there's nobody really using that. If you hear the terminology Kik Happy, that is saying to meet up on the Kik app. Wishbone, it's voting in chat rooms. Pieces have started to see where nudity is increasing. Basically, you say, like, give it a thumbs up, 8 out of 10, or thumbs down, 4 out of 10. So it's a really horrific idea of voting on people and things like that. So again, you're not allowed to have a private profile, just one of those apps that's growing in popularity over the last 5 to 7 years. Down app, this one's quite disgusting, but it again is one of the widest growing among older teenagers. And basically you put up a profile and you say whether you want to date that person or hook up with that person. So these are applications that we don't see on the phones here. Fortnite, a lot of kids are playing this. There's 200 million plus users worldwide. Fortnite has done a better job recently of adding parental controls though. So you're going to start to see that trend as well. Parents have gotten to the point where I think these companies have noticed, the big ones, that they're not going to allow their kids to go on until there are some sort of parental controls. So we're starting to see more and more of that. And so they now, the one piece I want to caution you though, if you have a Fortnite player, make sure that the in-app purchasing is turned off, because that can add up insanely quick, and you'll be surprised when you get your Discover bill and you decide, what's Fortnite? Why did we spend $600 on this stuff? Xbox, PS, PlayStation, the Switch, they all allow for parental controls on this now as well. So there are pieces that you can restrict the chat features. You can create it so that they have to have the username of another individual to play within the same system and things like that. Tinder, we talked a little bit about that one, the dating app. That one's pretty widely known, so I won't spend a ton of time there. But again, a very, very popular app. This is one I want to talk about, and this is a piece that I've started doing with my 7th grader. She constantly wants new applications, and she wants to see things. So a lot of times we'll start to talk about the privacy policies. And this is a really great tool to start using with your own kids to say, like, why is it important to look at privacy policy? Because this right here, I don't know if you can see this, to help you stay safe, chats are anonymous unless you tell someone this is the privacy policy, by the way. You who you are, we don't suggest that. You can stop the chat at any time. Oh, by the way, predators have been known to use Omegle, so please be careful. Like, this is in their terms of use / privacy policy. And this is why it's so important. And we, like we were talking about for the trusted learning environment, every single application that has been approved by ZCS, we've read the privacy policy, and we've probably read it several times because they change like 3 times a year now. So we're continually monitoring that. But this is a scary piece. Like, this is why we're going to start reading these together. I'm not making them read verbatim, but we have that discussion of why is this important. Because, like we talked about, the internet is now an attention-based economy. They're doing anything they can to get your personally identifiable information, and we don't know what they're going to do with it all the time. So I only like to go to sites where they are very specific about, this is what we collect. This is what we do once you cancel your subscription with us. This is what happens if there's ever a breach of our systems. We will inform you and let you know, do these things. So there are all these pieces that we look at for science looking at schools that we're starting to do with our kids. Because how many of us, and I've done it myself 100 times, you get the terms of agreement, you just scroll to the bottom and hit the agree and then move on, right? There are a lot of interesting pieces in there with what they're doing with your data. So it's something that I recommend you're doing and having some of those conversations with your teenagers about that. Oops. This is, these are all new pieces that have come out, not all of them. But I think a video chat or a chat system or something comes out like every 5 minutes seemingly at this point, to the point where it's really hard to keep up with. Again, all of these are some sort of different system of, is it a chat roulette where I just go on there and then all of a sudden something's going to pop up and we hope for the best, right? So there's a lot of those that have been taking off on the charts and people are downloading them. But again, we're going to talk a little bit about some safety pieces in place for phone applications, things like that you can have done. But too many to actually go through because there's just so many of them coming up. Ask FM, another one. It's not monitored. There's lots of cyberbullying that goes on in this, so it's basically question and answer style, so it spreads a lot of rumors and things like that. Just not a good system. After School is another phone app where cyberbullies, they basically tell secrets and spread rumors, and it's anonymous. And so, again, anything that is anonymous where you can exist in digital duality, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, it's not a good system. And there's some actual interesting research that we'll talk about as well with compartmentalization of our teenagers. Meet Me, social network that differentiates itself from others. It introduces people to new friends instead of connecting them to existing ones. So again, it's strangers meeting. This is a piece you probably want to look at. These are coming out in droves as well. They look like a calculator, but you put in 9 plus 2 or whatever you said, and then it equals, and it actually flips over, and it's got hidden apps behind it. It's a vault for all the things that they don't want seen by anybody else. And it actually functions as a calculator until you put 9 plus 2 or whatever the system is set up. There's also audio managers. We've seen this where it looks like it's just a system for playing your music and seeing the up and down of the bass and all of that. But in reality, as soon as you put the settings to something, it flips over and has all kinds of, you can store pictures, applications, anything you want. It's a way to hide people from seeing what they don't want seen. So, what can we do as parents? Anybody familiar with this show? One of my favorites as a kid, Press Your Luck. Anybody familiar with Michael Larson? Has anybody heard this story? Okay, so this is what we hear a lot, and not as much anymore, but back in like 14, 15, 12, 13, there were a lot of this system of, here's a phone, I hope you don't do anything bad. I hope this goes well. And it's just, you hear us say this a lot, hope is not a strategy when it comes to these things. But Michael Larson's here, was on Press Your Luck. This I think came out like 1983, 1984. He watches it for first time. He is a ice cream truck driver of some sort in Ohio, and he watches it and he notices something pretty quickly, that the light pattern is the same every single time. So what does he do? He films every single one of the shows. He builds his own in his house, quits his job, just totally practices this all the time, so he knows exactly how to hit it. And he goes to the show, and you can see these two here, this guy in the corner that has his head, he's in agony. There's a story that Michael Larson tells that he was sitting in the green room, and this guy was a pastor of some sort. And he felt bad because this guy was like, hey, good luck. And he's like, oh, luck has nothing to do with it. but that's not the strategy I'm using. I'm going to dominate everybody, so I'm sorry you had to be with me. And he talks about how he felt bad because this guy was a needy pastor. He was going to do something for his parish or something like that. And so he has this down, and this is 1983-84, wins $110,000, which stood for decades, I think, as the most won ever. And he put out this statement of, hope is not a strategy. I knew I was going to win. Now, I need to put this asterisk in case you look at this. He takes all that money and ends up going to jail for fraud, for real estate, or something like that. So, not the best story on the back end, but I like the hope is not a strategy piece of it. So, we talk about that a little bit, but that's what we try to impart. Is you just can't hope your way through what our kids are going to do online and with some of these things out there. I talked enough about TLE, so I'll kind of skip that. And I think we've got some friends. I forgot to introduce them. These three over here, they're standing, and Kyle's taking questions for us as well. They're digital coaches, digital learning coaches. And so they constantly are around the district helping with our purposeful use of technology in the classroom and training of teachers, and helping teachers understand that the relationship is first. How do we get these purposeful tools in our hands to make sure we're extending the learning experience? So they're going to actually touch on some of the things we do in the district that talks about some of the digital citizenship and leadership pieces that we go through. So I don't know which one of you wanted to come up and share so that I can take it to the water.
Hi, my name is Kyle Meinfor, and this is Stevie Frank, and we're two of the digital learning coaches, and this actually addresses one of the questions that came up on one of the forums is, what kind of training do our teachers have on using technology in the classroom? And that's actually our three roles, is working with students and teachers on how to effectively use technology in the classroom. How can we get students to be more engaged in the classroom with the content curriculum through the use of technology? How can we use technology to have them collaborate with one another or with others around the school district or even within the world in a safe environment? So that's one of the things that we are constantly doing. Matter of fact, today at our middle schools, they had an E-Day, and so we spent time with those middle school teachers looking at some of those components and how can we use some of these digital resources, not just as busy work, but what are some ways that we can do to truly enhance the curriculum that's being taught. One of the things we also do that's a very important part of our role is making sure that we're educating both teachers and students on digital curriculums. We have a Common Sense Media certification for our district, which means all of our students, K to 12, go through some different types of lessons on cyberbullying. We do lessons on what are some of the things that you don't want to share with people online. What are some of the things, how can you stay safe online? How do you know that every time that you send something via text or email or via chat, it's out there, you can't pull it back. And so we're constantly working on developing lessons that we can teach our students all the way starting back in kindergarten. And so everything from internet safety, privacy and security, informational literacy, and copyright. And that's one of those things. But if I can just right click and copy that image off of Google, why shouldn't I? And talking about how that's somebody else's work. So we are constantly adding to those things that are embedded into the curriculum as well. If you have an elementary student, this fall we're going to be doing an E-Day where all the students in K4 will actually be doing a digital leadership lesson all day, where they're going to be learning about a lot of these things. And I'm going to let Stevie kind of talk about what are some of the things we do at the middle school level as well.
All right, thanks, Kyle. So I'm Stevie Frank. I was actually a teacher at Z West for 4 years. So I was like boots on the ground. So this was kind of like my jam whenever I took this role on. And I was like, I completely understand what it's like for middle school teachers and what we do every day. So this year, since every student received a one-to-one device in 5th grade that was provided from the district, we went ahead and we put together a presentation. It was like, here's everything, just to make sure that every single 5th grader was hearing one message. And these were some highlights that we made sure to let these 5th graders know. So again, since it was their first one-to-one experience, we talked to them about what does digital citizenship look like. So we kind of modeled that behavior. Kyle and I went into the different middle schools and we were like, so if your teacher comes up to you and if they're teaching a lesson and you've got your laptop out and you're typing on it, your teacher might be like, hey, let's put this in listening mode. And that just looks like you're taking your screen down to a 45-degree angle. We talked so much about what it was like to be present in the moment. So everything that's down on your screen, you can come back to that. But that person, that one-to-one contact, that is irreplaceable. And so we really tried to hone in on those skills and strategies, to give for those kids and for them to really understand what it looks like. When I was in the classroom, and a lot of my colleagues as well, we were like, your laptop is like a textbook, right? Where this is just a way to learn. It's really cool and it's shiny and it's new, but it's just a way that you're gonna learn and do school. So we really just talked about what that looks like for them. So again, would you be like staring down at your book, or would you be paying attention to the teacher? And we talk about those things with them through. We also just really talk about what it's like to care for your device. And so since you have these shiny, pretty new things, let's keep them shiny, pretty, and new. So we talk about like, what does it look like to when you're walking down the hallway and you have your laptop, where should it be? Should you put your pencil in it and then slam it shut and then, there goes your screen. So we really talked a lot about like the physical part of it and what it looks like to charge your device every night. We were like, you go home, you do your homework. What does your routine look like when you get home? Okay, you plug in your laptop. You completely shut it down. We went through everything, like exactly this is what it looks like every night when you go home, just as you would, packing for your lunch for the day. We also talked a lot about like how to on Canvas and OneDrive, and we talked about all of those important pieces of technology that all of the teachers use. As fifth graders, we understand that is a lot to go from the elementary setting where they kind of use Canvas here and there to where they hit fifth grade, and it's school, and it's what it looks like. And so we talked to them even about what does it look like to message your teachers? You have a question. How do you check your grades? What does that look like? And so again, this was just kind of that one message that we gave them. This was also a screenshot from the actual PowerPoint that we gave them. And I don't know, I guess I like to say like we kind of scared them when we gave them this information. But we were like, everything you type on your device is being monitored. And we were like, even if you erase it. So we were like, it doesn't matter what that looks like, everything we have to do, we have to back it up on servers, and we have to keep everything, so everything that you do on these devices is being monitored. And it was so funny to see all their faces, and I go, really? We're like, yes, really? So that was also kind of helpful for them to realize. And then I talked about, with my personal self, I was like, I have a work computer, and I have a home computer. So there are things that I do on my work computer that's going to be different than things I do on my home computer. And so I kind of talked them through what that looked like. I also talked about how I manage my own technology. I was like, I don't have my phone on me right now, because if I did, I'd be looking at that instead of being present in the moment. And so those types of things, these are what our teachers are doing every single day. And that's just how it starts with that modeling component. And so I think I hit it all. We also offer Zeek Squad, which is a student technology leadership program. And so what it is we really teach these digital citizenship skills with these groups of students who wants to join in the club. And then they become like our little soldiers for us. And so, for example, what that looked like in my classroom, where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm teaching this lesson and I've got a couple of kiddos that need to know how to print. They're like, hey, I'm part of Zeek Squad, I learned how to do this, let me help this kiddo out. So really kind of creating those little leaders within the school was pretty cool to see.
Touching a little bit on that, and I saw Kyle forward me one of the questions talking about some of the filtration that Stevie touched on a little bit there. So at ZCS we use a product called Lightspeed. It's a specific filter firewall kind of item that is used to filter the internet for us, and it's a leading educational group. So what's really nice about it is they have kind of the packages of here's like the standard filtration, and they are across the entire United States, actually worldwide, I believe. And anything they find in other districts and other school systems, they keep adding that to their filtration processes. So it's a group that it's a filter that continues to evolve with us. But I don't want to actually say that it's an absolutist piece. There are a lot of different ways kids have found around our filters. And actually, a lot of the companies that we have started to block find ways to change some of their pieces so that our filters can't pick it up right away. It's very interesting what's happening in that world. So the filter is one piece that we have available, but it is not an absolutist piece that allows us to say with 100% certainty. It is one of the layers, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit in a second with like the home network and what can be done there as well. So, there we go. So what can be done at home? One of the pieces we wanted to touch on is the screen time piece. There's a lot of different research out there There's a few different people we're going to talk about, and I apologize, I'll read a little bit just for those that are at home because they don't know if they can actually see this. But the Oxford Internet Institute talked about some large studies they've done in the past talking about the correlations between device and a child's well-being. And there's a lot of different caveats and confounding factors that go into this. But basically they started to talk about this piece of family context, how parents set rules, digital screen time, if they're actively engaged in exploring the digital world together, such a crucial piece at a young age to set those really cool pieces of modeling for them, are more important than raw screen time. So that's a piece that a philosophy that we kind of utilize there. University of Michigan did a large study, how children use devices, not how much time they spend on them, is a much more, stronger predictor of emotional and social problems connected with screen addiction. So what you want to look out for is when there's behavior change related to that. So we'll talk a little bit about digital nutrition as well. It's the same piece as when you're feeding your kids as well. If they're eating goldfish and Swiss rolls all day long, that is not a great diet. They need to have a balanced diet, and you can have that entertainment piece every once in a while, or the fun snack or brownie or whatever. But really, it's about what you're consuming. So if you are actively engaged in building something or creating something or studying another culture or talking to an author on the internet that it's a book you're reading to get further insight, that is a far different piece of screen time than simply what they call death scrolling through Facebook and things like that, where you're not getting as much as you want to do with it. We know that using screens to soothe or pacify kids sets up some concerning patterns. So if you have younger children, that is something. How many people have been at a restaurant? I think I talked about this in the last one. And you look around, there's a family of 5, all 3 kids are on some sort of iPad, both adults are looking at whatever their Facebook piece, and you see it almost in every restaurant you go into until the food arrives. It's really hard. I'm not gonna lie. Our kids get upset. The deep dish pizza is taking more than an hour to get here. It can be tough, but it's a piece that they really recommend against. And about every single one of the psychologists referenced and what we've seen from them say the same thing about the digital pacification and trying at all costs to avoid that piece because it really gets ingrained in our kids. So they talk about those pieces. So again, to just read for the groups at home, we want to avoid using screens to placate tantrums, just like we want to avoid eating treats to calm emotional storms. So I thought Jocelyn Brewer, which we've did some book studies on her, we actually tried to get her to speak a while back as well, and that may be something we try to do again here in the future as we continue this Parenting a Digital Age series. We'll try to get some more pieces in there. Another one we have looked into a little bit is Lynn Shinfield. She talks a little bit about that piece we were talking about earlier, is that your monitoring or your filtration or whatever is one piece of the puzzle when it comes to this digital parenting. It is a very tough piece, but you can't monitor your way through it. There has to be the relationship involved, and we have here, you have to teach kids to monitor themselves. You have to model. There was a piece, I don't know why it didn't make to this, but it talked about how much, and I think it's somewhere in like 68% of parents admit that they are constantly or sometimes distracted themselves by their phone in the presence of their families. And so I've caught myself doing it. A lot of this right here is a very humbling experience. Like I've done it myself several times where I've been on the phone and missed an entire conversation. That was probably a really good one with my 4th grader. And I don't like that, but it happened. So be ready to be humbled a little bit. I think that's in one of our pieces here in a second anyhow. But you have access to know more about your children than any other parent group in history because of some of these tools. So trying to take advantage of that piece is a really crucial item as well. So as we talked about that, our filters, every day we are blocking proxy sites. Every day we basically get a report. It's a report that comes to me about 4:30, so toward the end of my day, I look at the report and it kind of gives us a breakdown of what's happened on our network. And a lot of times we'll be like, what is this? And the best part about these proxy websites, and basically proxies that really break it heuristically down here, is instead of going through our firewall to the internet, they find a different way to find another server that allows them to go somewhere else on the internet outside of our firewall. And so these are very easy to find, but a lot of them are free, and those are the ones that need to actively be avoided because they are actively stealing your information and trying to delve further into your computer. So there's a danger with kids that are trying to do this. But we try to block those, but every day there's new ones that pop up. Every single day that we look on there, there's more proxies that we didn't know about that we continue to block, but they're so easy to set up nowadays, it's getting harder and harder. VPNs, very similar, virtual private network, so they can set those up, they can hit those because our filters don't recognize them as something that's detrimental, because they can pop them up and individualize them. This really grew a ton for Netflix. Anybody a baseball fan, Chicago Cubs baseball fan in here that tried to watch a game on Netflix, or not Netflix, what am I thinking of? Sling is what I was thinking of. But there's a piece on, is there anybody familiar with Sling? Sorry, I put the wrong piece on here, Netflix. It's a TV system where I would try to watch a Cubs game and it'd say, this is blocked out in your market. You're too close to Chicago, we're not gonna allow you to see it. So that actually spurred a huge industry of these VPNs so that you could go and they would basically geolocate you and say, you're within the area, too close to Chicago, we're blocking you out. So people would find these VPNs so that they could go through that, then log into their TV Sling piece and then watch the game. And it really created this whole new industry that has not helped us as a school system or parents if your kids are trying to get around some of your systems. Constantly seeing USB sticks that allow for a Tor browser so that kids can get around our filters, hit up the dark web in some situations, or just move back into the regular internet. There are pieces we've seen in the past where kids have found ways to use Google Translate to actually utilize a different language and different servers for those languages to find a way around if they know enough of a different language to find the websites they want. So it's a really tricky situation for some of that. And again, the reason it's there, we use Google Translate every single day at schools. We can't just, we're blocking Google Translate because there's a dependence on it in some aspects for the district. So there's a lot of these really tricky pieces that we deal with on the daily that can happen at your own house. So if you think you're filtering, and you probably are doing a great job of it, but just know that there are a lot of different ways around these systems. The one that we saw a lot with iPhones, and they are trying to clean this up a little bit, but used to, if your parents had you on the family share plan, your child requests an application, it goes to the parent, they say, yeah, that's fine, you can do that one, or no, you're not getting that one. Well, what they would do is you could go on eBay or wherever, find a used gift card, an Apple gift card. Then you could use those numbers, even though there's nothing on it. They would buy it. Then they would set up their own account with it so they could download all the free applications. Obviously, they wouldn't be able to pay for certain applications, but most of your social media is free because, again, you are the product. So there's pieces there where alternate accounts were set up, so it looks like everything's fine, but again, it's kind of a tricky situation. Just kind of talked about that one there, so I'll skip it. One piece I want to talk about here with our teenagers, one of the pieces we hear a lot is figuring out that balance with your kids, because my friends all use this piece. We've talked about this, sometimes the phone isn't just a tool anymore, it becomes an instrument to these kids. They actually emote with these things. It's such an important piece in their development for some kids. So he talks a little bit about that piece and how you can build off of those, but the piece that I love from him, talking about teen online socialization, they're going to do it. We have to find a way to do it in a real safe way for them. But he said, ask your kids what their friends are using. They're really, really quick to tell you everything their friends are doing. But if you ask them individually what they're doing, they're not as quick to be like, oh yeah, I do this, 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 and this. But chances are they're probably doing some of what their friends are doing. So that was a piece we built right there. So the best internet safety piece is you. Kind of like you've seen that pattern that's emerging here. Rules without relationship leads to rebellion. We're going to talk a little bit about family and media use plans here in a second, but the piece you want to do with those is have less of the context rules. So saying things like, please don't do anything dumb online today. That's a context rule. Okay, yeah, that sounds good, I won't do that. It doesn't give them a lot. So try to be very specific on the content they can use, the activity, accountability that they have, and walking them through those pieces. And then include the whole family in the planning of this. Don't just present the plan of here it is, if you want your phone, sign right here. We've seen some studies that say when they're built together as a family, they're actually done better. And I shared in the last group, hopefully it wasn't in this group, but my 7th grader is really good at trying to convince us of all her needs. And she's very, very she can go for days trying to get a student at home. What else can you do at home? Set limits, write that contract, include yourself in it. Kids really respond well to knowing that parents have some of the same restrictions as us, or as them. So there needs to be more face-to-face than online as well. So try to look at that throughout a week and say, like, did I spend more time talking to my child through texting, or did I have more conversation with my child? And kind of evaluate that and try to determine it. Play and learn together. This is more on the younger children's side, but it's definitely like pieces we talked about with readings and privacy policies. There's definitely a piece there. I don't enjoy, I said this in the last one, I don't really enjoy playing Minecraft all that often, but I do it with my 6-year-old, 7-year-old. And when we watch YouTube, the piece that I talk to him about is, hey, we're gonna watch YouTube. Why are we watching YouTube? What are we trying to gain from YouTube right now? If it's just, I'm bored and I wanna watch something, there's a lot better programming out there than the algorithm YouTube's gonna provide for you. But if they say, I want to, and this was an actual example, I want to build a gigantic Mario in Minecraft, like a giant structured Mario that has, you can walk through the inside of them and do all this fun stuff. He wanted to do that, so guess what? We went to YouTube. There's like 16 other people that have done this before and built this gigantic Mario mansion. And so we watched it and we started building ourselves together. So I spent a good solid 90 minutes with my son talking about, we went to YouTube, we found the piece we were actually looking for, we were using our screen time in a meaningful way to build something, and then we had to transfer in context to Minecraft and we built the thing. So it was a really meaningful piece, and I hope that as we continue to do that, he continues to learn. Oh, that's a really cool thing to do. Be a good role model. How many of you, this is a piece I brought up, with password safety, how many of you kids know your password to your phone? You don't have to raise your hand, but it's one piece that's a great modeling piece. That is my phone, that's my password, you do not need to know it. If you need onto my phone, I will provide you with that. But there's a piece that we're starting to see where kids are very willing to share their passwords with things. We just recently had a slew of kids that had been sharing some of their passwords, and then friends were logging into their email and sending these horrendous emails to other people on behalf of that other student. And it took us a while to figure out what was going on there. It's just a piece of protecting your password, but they learned early on, oh, mom shares her password with me, dad shares password with me. So one of those pieces that can be a good role modeling piece. Create tech-free zones. Hopefully those are occurring in your house right now. This is actually a picture from my kitchen. At night, all of those get plugged in, the devices that they have, whether it's a phone or iPad or whatnot. And then, I kind of have to, in the winter, I get called really early on to help with if there's weather delays and things like that, so I do have to have my phone a little closer. But the rest of the family does put theirs there, and it's a piece that we practice at dinner time for meals in general, and then at bedtime, all the phones go there to charge. And they can get those at the end of the day, or in the morning. And then don't use text as password. We touched on that one just a little bit. And it can happen quite a bit. When your child's upset, your teenager, they tend to get upset from time to time. To be like, I'm just going to let them hang out in their room for the next 2 hours while they calm down looking at Facebook, or not Facebook, whatever social media would be. Kind of have that conversation about, let's talk through that first, and then, you can move on to some of those pieces. What else? This is the digital duality that I was talking about. There is a really big piece about talking to your kid about being the same person online that you are in real life. That's why I don't recommend anything that allows you to be anonymous online. It's just, I don't see a great system for it unless you're taking some sort of survey that you want to impart that information for. But you need to be that. I read an interesting study, and I'll have to try to find it, maybe I can add it to this for you. But they started to talk about the digital duality, where kids will go online and be somebody completely different than how they act in real life, and it's helping them develop this horrible compartmentalization. I'm sorry, I'm doing that with my brain here. But it allows them to develop that piece, and it can have some terrible effects later in life with social emotional problems and things like that. So it's a piece that we continue to stress at our house, and I know a lot of our colleagues who do that as well, is you are the same person online as you are in real life. Talking about privacy early on, talk about those health checks. Talk about what information are you willing to give away for the convenience of talking to friends, or to be able to see these videos, or whatever it is. Is that really worth giving away all of your information? That piece, this one, urge kids to, like, how many of you have been like, fill out this survey to figure out what Disney princess you are, or whatever it is, And what it's doing is collecting all this information about you, and they're selling it to advertisers. And so there's pieces there that we have those conversations of, I know you want to see if you're actually Moana, but you're giving away a ton of information to figure that piece out. And they're going to utilize that, and there's a profile being built about you. So be careful about that piece and stress with your kids. This is the only personal information that you will ever have. Be cognizant of where you're putting it. And then talking about the pictures, you probably heard the piece of, would grandma be embarrassed to see you in this picture? If that's the case, it probably doesn't need to be online. That's one that I use with our kids. And then this one's big. Plan for when they make a mistake. And I can't stress this enough. One of the pieces, we just had the Zionsville Police Department contact us, and they're seeing a massive rise in sextortion cases, where a kid will meet, a stranger will be like, hey, I want to befriend you on whatever social media site it is. They'll try to get them to say, hey, I just want to know what you look like, and they'll send this innocent picture of like, here I am in my ball cap, and then the Photoshop abilities of some of the people out there, they can make it look like it is a new picture at that point of the kid. Say, I will send this to everybody on your list unless you pay me this amount of money. And you need to make sure this piece here, when there's a mistake made, they need to know they can come to you. That's the scariest thing I think a parent can know is like, my kid has been put in this situation. They don't probably know what to do in this situation. They're going to be working off complete adrenaline at that point. So be ready for a situation and know to have a plan when a mistake is made from that perspective. And when they do try to figure out a way around your filter or download those applications or use a gift card to get online that they shouldn't have done. So make sure you know what you're going to do when they do mess up, because they're going to. We know they're going to falter, and that's a part of the growing experience, or that's how we look at it. And then, it is it's a hard job. That one of the data pieces that we talked about is from 20 years ago, most parents think it is immensely harder today to parent than it was in 2002. So it comes down to this piece of, it is your responsibility to know almost everything that's out on the internet that your kid can access. And that's why, putting some of these layers in place, doing the modeling, doing all of those things we talked about tonight can help with that. But again, it's all about the layering piece. Family media use plans. We're going to show you a couple here, but as you start to develop those, does anybody has some of you developed those maybe? No? Really great tool, and it really helps with that piece I just talked about, having a plan for when things go wrong. But kind of articulate your family goals, and think of the word TAP, or the acronym TAP there. Transparent, it's accessible so they can visit it when they want, and it's practical. Don't make something that nobody can follow. Like I've seen some that are like XYZ, it's hard to follow, nobody's going to remember all of it. It should be short, sweet, to the point, and very practical. And then talk about the controls you're setting up in place and what can, again, happen if things go wrong and they don't follow those controls. Also, build it together. Let them arbitrate a little bit on their behalf. Studies show that the plans are followed much better when there's participation of all members when they do that. A couple that we've seen that are pretty good, I think, if I remember right, the healthychild.org is actually from the American Association of Pediatrics, and then Common Sense is, Kyle was talking about Common Sense. If you've not visited Common Sense Media, it is an amazing website. There's a review of every application, well not every, a review of the applications that they are aware of. There are reviews of movies, there are reviews of shows, there are reviews of platforms. There's all kinds of information on Common Sense Media. It is a really great tool. And it is paid for through a conglomeration of companies that said this is a problem, we're going to give money in, and they can utilize that to develop all of these applications and things like that. There's a couple more here. We're going to put this website, or we're going to put this on our website so that you can have access to all of these links and everything like that. So the video will be up there. The actual PowerPoint will be up there, so you'll have access to all of this information. So I'm just going to kind of squeeze through that one. Oh, too quick. Take advantage of the tools that you do have. Apple has some great family sharing plans that make it much easier for you. If you've noticed, most of your internet service providers are now providing routers so that you can have access to controlling the internet in your own home. So I think Verizon's doing that. I've lost my train of thought there on the other ones, but there are several that we know of that are actively putting that in place. With Metronet, I think is one of those that's starting down that path. There are some other pieces. Google has some interesting resources on wellbeing.google, where they talk about what parents can do and all the access that Google gives and what pieces are in play. Google's actually developing some cool stuff, or YouTube is developing some cool stuff, where they're doing the parental personalization feature. It's in beta right now, but it's giving a lot of different access to the parents to determine what YouTube can look like for their individual kids. And what's really cool is they are starting to work with the internet filters that schools use. So it's going to give us, because one of the hardest parts of filtering would be the YouTube piece. Obviously YouTube has all kinds of amazing videos, but it also has some terrible things on there. And they are trying to work with that to make it easier to filter for certain things. So we're excited to see what comes down the pipeline with that to help possibly set us up for some more success. But at home, you have YouTube Kids. If you have some younger kids, the filters down way more. But again, don't trust that the filter's going to do your job for you. It still airs. It has the ability to be airing. So new pieces coming out all the time. And I'm really excited about these pieces because they're hearing parents. They're saying, like, this is really hard. You're making it impossible. So you've given us a binary decision. We're not going to allow our kids on YouTube. And they're finally starting to do some pieces where, like, okay, we can figure out how to help in this situation. So we're happy to see that as well. As you start to think down the phone path, some of your kids are probably older and have a phone, but you're starting to see more and more of these come out. There's somebody even told me about a new one, Gizmo or something like that in the last session. But Gab is a new one that's come out recently where it makes calls, you can send text messages, it has GPS location, you take pictures, but no social media. It really doesn't even connect to the internet. It won't allow them to do that. So it's a smart-looking phone that has some of the cool camera features, but at the same time, it will not allow for other pieces that may not be, the students or your kids may not be ready for. So different pieces there. There's several out there now that is basically taking a flip phone and turning it into a smartphone-looking object. Circle. This is a product I use in my own house. There's a lot of these out there. There's Guyfun, there's Koala, there's several of these that they're plug and play, where you download an application as the parent, you buy the product and it plugs in the back of your wireless router at home, and you will have access to basically everything that goes on in your own home network. And actually Circle allows you to put a VPN onto your kid's phone so that if they leave, that part's not exactly perfect, as we've experienced a little bit, but the at-home performance is outstanding. You can set bedtimes, you can set morning routines so that they can't get online until a certain time. You can pause the internet, you can see their search history, you can limit by application. So if you want your student to be able to see YouTube for 50 minutes a day, you have 50 minutes. And then, again, the arbitration starts shortly after that. Like, I just need 10 more minutes. And there are rewards that you can send too, so you'll find those pieces out. And if you want to have fun with your significant other, you can set up a profile where they're not looking and turn off the bed on them. I've done that before. There's another one. This one actually may be as we get into the older years with Bark, because it is a lot more specific when it comes to what is on social media pieces. So if your kid is actively engaged in social media, Bark has a much stronger system, more on the phone side of things. I think it helps with knowing what text messages are sent if you wanted to monitor that. So it really has a wider array in the social media field. Anybody use Bark out there? It's a pretty solid product. I don't actively use it at home, but from what I understand from talking to people, it's pretty solid. And then there's all kinds of these pieces that you can put on individual devices for when they are possibly leaving the house or whatnot. But there's just so many of them. I won't spend a ton of time, but a few more phone controls that are out there. And this list is growing rapidly as well. So a quick compulsory search online, you can find all kinds of different ones out there that would fit the needs of your home. More resources, again, I already talked about it, but if you haven't visited Common Sense Media, do yourself a favor, just all kinds of great pieces there. And then we'll again, put this out for you at some point. Kyle said somebody had actively asked about applications that we've approved for the district. You can hit this link up, it shows all of the ones and all the personally identifiable information that are given through the applications. So it'll say it takes their name, it needs their email address. So those are the ones we typically look for, and those are the ones that are approved typically. We have some that we purchase as a district, like the textbook rental fees that you pay, like for Canvas and things like that. Those are always evaluated before you do a purchase as a district. But then the teachers, if they see a new application that they want to start utilizing in class, we have a platform where they submit to us what it is, then we read the privacy policies, we make sure it's okay, and sometimes we have to tell them, sorry, this doesn't work for us, that's not an approved application for you at this time, because their privacy policy or terms of use just don't meet our qualifications that we've set up from personally identifiable information perspective. And Kyle, we're going to talk a little bit about the last piece. We get asked, there's all these applications, all these different things you use through the school. So there's this piece, it's called zcsfamilies.weebly.com. We built this because parents would say, I just don't understand this piece of Canvas, or PowerSchool is confusing me, or whatever it may be. So go ahead and you want to click on that. Is it coming up? So we built this website that's specifically for parents. Kyle, I'll let you talk. Sure, you built it.
So one of the things we hear time and time again is our kids know more about this technology used at schools than we do at home. We need someone to teach us. And so we've created this website where we've created a lot of tutorial videos, a lot of help guides to show parents at home, okay, how do I create an observer account for Canvas so I can see what my kids are doing on Canvas each day? Or how do I create a PowerSchool account so that I can see what my kids' missing assignments are, or how they're progressing through the standards. And so we've gone through all of those major components, K through 12, that are on there, and we've put all those resources on this one place. We've got information about our one-to-one laptop program on there, and what are the requirements for each of that. We've also put on there, if for some reason you're having an issue, I can't create an account for PowerSchool. Up in the top left corner, we have a link to the help desk system, which will go to our text, where we can then contact you via email or phone if you give that to us, and we can kind of try to help walk you through what that looks like. Or my child's 5th grade laptop, we can't connect it to our home Wi-Fi. Creating the help ticket will help us to guide you with that information. So we're hoping that this website, we're just rolling it out this year, is helpful for families at home when they're not in the schools day in, day out, and then trying to learn from their kids who may not be translating that same thing that they're learning at school. This gives you an idea. Plus we put all of the logins, so if you need to log into PowerSchool, Canvas, Parent Square, School Pay, all those take you directly to the logins for each of those, so they're all in one location. So you're not having to go to all these different places to find out about all these digital tools that our district uses.
One caveat on that is, with the help desk ticket system, our first priorities are teachers, our students, and things like that, so we'll always be taking care of those first, and so you may not hear back from us very quickly, but we'll typically try to get back to you as quick as we can. But I just don't want you to think like, oh, I submitted that 12 hours ago and I haven't heard anything, because during the course of the day, we are quite all over the district, putting out little fires and whatnot. So that basically puts us, we're pretty close to 7:30. Yeah, we are at 7:30, so. If anybody has like individual questions they want to come ask or whatnot, you can either submit those there. My email is dlayton, D-L-A-Y-T-O-N, at zcs.k12.in.us. Always happy to answer an email or jump on a call with you to try to explain anything that would help you in your quest to parent. So thank you so much for coming out. We appreciate it. And again, let us know how we can help.